Slavery in Rome and why it was considered a luxury good. Slaves were very important for Roman society. Without slaves, Rome wouldn't have become so wealthy and mighty. Roman economy depended on them, and approximately 25 to 40% of the Roman population were slaves. Slaves were considered as a property of their masters and had only very restricted rights. A master could free his slave for his faithful services, or the slave could save money to purchase his freedom. Anybody could become a slave, but the majority of slaves were prisoners of war, whom the Romans took when conquering foreign countries. So like a rich man might have owned about 500 slaves, while an emperor might have owned about 20,000 slaves. A famous slave revolt, which started by a former gladiator named Spartacus, who led a revolt which lasted 2 years. 70,000 slaves rampaged through Italy, but were eventually defeated by 8 legions, and roughly only 1,000 of them survived. Most of them were all crucified along the Via Appian Way. Now, slaves working in town were usually treated better than those who worked in the rural areas. Slaves with talent, skill, or beauty were worth the most on the slave market because of their normal profession. Like, for instance, a cook could have been worth 50 agricultural slaves. And what the thing is about Rome is, by having slaves that did regular jobs, the people that lived, the rich people who had the slaves, didn't have to do nothing. They could have a slave that does their cooking, a slave that does their dressing for them, their makeup, all that type of stuff. And what allowed the Romans to become more educated, while they had all these people doing all this work, they had more time. And the thing about having these big civilizations is time. By allowing them to have time to do these types of things, they were able to grow. And that is why slaves were considered luxury goods, because of the way the Romans were able to use them in their society. Now, as messed up as it is, Rome was a slave-based society.